So there's a cartoon that makes its rounds every once in a while. It's a cartoon of a guy who is standing next to God, and you know it's God because God's got the big beard, and he's got the long white robe. And God also, in the cartoon, has this huge backpack on his back, like he's going, hiking or something. He's got a suitcase in each hand, and he's got bags under each arm. It looks like he's ready to go through the security line at Newark Airport. And the guy says to God, God, you come with a lot of baggage. And then in the next frame, God responds and says, man, this is your stuff. We can tend to lay a lot of baggage on God. We can, as the old proverb goes, God created humankind in his image, and we returned the favor. We can lay things on God that aren't of God, they're of us. And this parable is kind of a great example of just that. At Vestry on Monday night, we were reading this parable, and Lily brought up the fact that different cultures read this parable differently. Typically in the West, you present them with the story of this parable that Jesus gives in Luke 15, and you say, well, what was the problem with the young son? People in the West will say, well, he spent all his money. He wasted it, right? It's his fault. But you ask other cultures what had happened, and they'll say, oh, there was a famine. You might not have even recognized that there was a famine. Like famine just sort of like goes in our ears and in one ear and out the other, because in our world, North America, we don't kind of do famine here. But in some areas of the world, they do. And so they see famine and they're like, well, he could have had $1 million or $1. If there's no food, he's going to be hungry. There are other cultures of the world that put a real emphasis on hospitality to strangers. Someone comes into the village, someone comes into the town, and you take care of them. You do everything. You might have nothing, but you give the person everything you can. When those cultures hear this parable, they say the problem was that the community was broken. Because here was a young guy who's eating pig food and no one took him in. So was it his fault? Did he spend all of his money? Was it the famine's fault? Was it the community's fault? Yes. We tend to take whatever our particular perspective is, and we read the parable, another parable, the scriptures through that perspective. It shows up even in the parable's title. What do we call this parable? The prodigal son. Of course. Does Jesus call it the parable of the prodigal son? Does he say, verily, verily, I say unto thee, here is the parable of the prodigal son? No. Does Luke call it the parable of the prodigal son? And now Jesus gave the parable of the prodigal. No. In fact, the phrase prodigal son doesn't show up in Christian history until the middle of the 4th century. 350 years of this parable being told, read, listened to, before someone said, oh, it's the parable of the prodigal son. And there's not a problem with that title, except it then automatically says, when you open up your Bible and you read it, or Chip reads it for you, that, oh, this parable is about the first son, the prodigal. But that title didn't come around for 350 years, so is it about the first son? Or are there some other characters in the parable we also need to look at? So this parable shows up in Luke 15 in a cluster of 3 parables. There's 2 shorter, sort of simpler parables, and then there's this one. And, things in the Bible show up in threes an awful lot for obvious reasons. And oftentimes there'll be like one that establishes a pattern, the second will reinforce the pattern, and the third one will sort of break the pattern. And there's where you can find some meaning to what's going on. So the first parable, simple parable, you probably all know it. It's the parable of the shepherd who had 100 sheep and one went missing. And so the shepherd then, in this parable of Jesus, gets up, leaves the 99 to go out and search for the one. He searches, he finds, he brings it back, and he has a celebration. He recognizes it's missing. He goes out and searches for it, finds it, celebrates. Second parable is the parable of a woman who has 10 coins and one coin goes missing. She recognizes that the coin has gone missing. She searches for the coin. She tears the whole place upside down. She finds the coin, and then she invites all of her neighbors over to have a celebration. See the pattern here? A recognition that something is lost, a diligent search, a location of the thing that was lost, and then a celebration. Which brings us to this third parable. So you have this son who asks his father for the inheritance, and the father gives it to him. He leaves. He blows all of his money. Then there's a famine. Then no one takes care of him. And finally he realizes the servants in his father's house have it better than he does, so he decides to go back home. But wait a minute. Okay, the son, like the sheep and the coin, have gone missing. They've gone off. But was there a diligent search? Did the father go off to search for the son? No. Did he then find the son? Obviously not. But there's a celebration. Kind of weird. Okay, we've broken this pattern, right? Until the celebration is going, and the DJ is probably playing music far too loud. And there's a recognition that someone is missing. Party is raging. Who's not there? The other son, the older brother. What does the father do? He leaves the party to go and search for his son. He then finds his son. You see what's going on? We're back into the same pattern as the previous two parables. Is this parable about the prodigal, or is this parable about the other son? Because the pattern seems to make us think that it's about this second son. Now, of course, this is where things get complicated. Sheep, I've never owned sheep, but I'm guessing not too terribly hard to move from one place to another. Like that shepherd just had to put a leash on it or pick him up, put him on his shoulders, and bring him back. The coin that was lost, right, did not put up a fight to go back into the purse. But teenagers, a little harder, right? He's not just going to go back to the party because his father wants him to. The son, the older son, gets into a tiff with his father. Father, I've been working like a slave all these years for you. I've been here doing exactly what you wanted to be, and you didn't even give me a little young goat for me to celebrate with my friends. But this son of yours, that's always like the hardest voice part of the whole thing for me. He can't identify him as his brother. He has to say to the father, this son of yours, like he's not mine, he's yours. He goes off and devours your property, and you throw a party for him. These three parables are about things that are lost that are then regained. Things that are lost that are found. And one of the messages of these three parables is that God is a God who searches for lost things, lost people. God is a God who diligently looks for us when we have gone astray, and God is a God who celebrates when the lost are found again. I think as Jesus tells this parable to his followers, to his disciples, as Luke writes it down for his community and for our community, adds a twist on this theme to remind them and us that the lost sheep isn't always the one that's out there, but that sometimes the lost, the hurt, the broken, the sad, the depressed, the worried, the wounded are right here. The son, this oldest son, gives voice to the 99 sheep that couldn't give voice to themselves because they're sheep. It's the voice, what about me? I've been hurting all these years too. This older son gives voice to the 9 coins that were right in the purse, right where they were supposed to be this whole time, but the coins can't speak for themselves because they're coins. This older son gives voice to anyone who has been in Christian community and has also felt wounded and hurt and lost and forgotten and angry and sad and depressed and anxious. And it's a parable that says that we matter too, that we too can be found, not just wandering around, but right here where we are. Almost not a Sunday goes by that someone doesn't catch me in the narthex or the parish hall or on text message or email. Someone will say to me, I really needed today. I really needed church. You know, my life is blowing up, work's blowing up, home's blowing up, whatever's going on, I really needed this. And my guess is that if at least one person a week says it, my guess is more of us probably feel that way. I'll be honest, 26 out of 52 weeks, that's me too. 26 out of 52 weeks, I probably need my sermon more than you do. 26 out of 52 weeks, I need to come here and pray. 26 out of 52, I really need to hear the music and sing along. 26 out of 52, I really need to connect with somebody and laugh with somebody or cry with somebody because I'm coming hurt, wounded, lost, sad, worried. And you find me. There would be a temptation to then only come to church when we need it. Like, I'm doing pretty good today. You know, life's good, work's fine, home's fine. I think I'll sleep in. Except on the Sundays that we don't need to be here, others need us to be here. Those are the Sundays where we don't come for ourselves to be ministered to. Those are the Sundays we come to minister to others. This older son who was lost is sitting in this room somewhere. And we'll be sitting in this room next week, and it might be a different person. And the week after that, and it's going to be a different person. And to you, whoever you are, I want to say you matter. That we love you. We want to sing with you and pray with you and feast at God's table with you. Because when you are found, when your wounds are bound up, then we all, as one family, can celebrate. Amen.